Check one. Check one. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, fellow cooperators. How are we this morning? All right, fantastic. And of course, welcome to this roundtable discussion. We will be starting shortly. So I know some of you are finishing up your breakfast, some of you at the breakfast station. So we will begin shortly. So in a couple minutes, we'll get into the agenda and start a robust discussion. All right, so thank you very much. We'll get going in a couple minutes. Okay. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Front to back, you all are hearing me clearly? Fantastic, great. And good morning once again. Welcome to the Cipriani College of Labor's high-level roundtable discussion this morning, part of our activities for the Caribbean World of Work Conference 2025. So at this time, we get into the agenda, and I'd like to invite the tech team to just play the safety briefing.
On behalf of management and team members, allow me to welcome you to Hilton Trinidad and Conference Center. Our evacuation procedure for this area in the event of an emergency is as follows. The hotel is protected by both a manual and automatic fire alarm detection system. If activation occurs, you will hear this evacuation message.
Attention, attention, an emergency has been reported in this building. Attention, attention, an emergency has been reported in this building.
The message will inform you that an emergency has occurred and you should stand by for further instructions. You will be advised subsequently by another message whether you should evacuate or the emergency has been rectified. In the event you are advised to evacuate the ballroom area, please follow the following evacuation routes. Primary evacuation route. Exit north along ballroom corridor and exit the ballroom corridor area completely and continue until you reach the pool junction staircase on your right to car park and follow the directional signs to the first level north car park at the muster point. Secondary evacuation route. Exit west through Belmont Saloon, exit doors down the emergency staircase on your left and follow directional signs to the muster point on the employees roadway. At the evacuation assembly point, you will stand by for further instructions from our risk management department, who will account for all participants together with the organizers of this event. You will not be allowed to re-enter the building until the all clear signal has been given by the fire services or our risk management department. I do hope that your time spent here would be meaningful and uneventful. We wish all a very pleasant, safe, and productive event.
Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to stand for the playing of the national anthem of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and then please remain standing for the opening prayer, the Credit Union prayer. Please join me in the Credit Union prayer, otherwise known as the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. Please take your seats. Thank you. A warm welcome, fellow cooperators. And of course, my name is Colin Bartholomew. I'm the Program Dean for Cooperative Studies and Program Manager for Innovation and Enterprise Development at Cipriani College. And I'd like to welcome you to this week, which kicks off our Caribbean World of Work Forum. This is the 4th edition, and this high-level roundtable discussion is how we enter this week full of activities. To get the program going, I'd like to invite Deputy Director for Academic Affairs at the college, Mr. Sheldon Celino, to bring opening remarks. Please welcome him.
Pleasant good morning, everyone. And I know your program has the director of the college, Dr. Andrew Vincent, on promoting the social and solidarity economy for sustainable development. These declarations present a rare and timely opportunity for us to reflect, align, and act. Our focus this morning, the role of the, as I said, it goes to the heart of what the college stands for. We believe that the future of work in the Caribbean must be rooted in resilience, transformation, and sustainability. Principles that are not only aspirational, but are embedded in our region's lived experiences of cooperation, mutual aid, and solidarity. The SSC, which includes cooperatives, many of which are here today, the non-financial cooperatives, the credit unions, mutual organizations, self-help groups, and social enterprises, provide an alternative model that places people before profit, equity before extraction, and community before commodification. It is in many ways the people's sector, and it is time that we treat it as such in our policies, investments, frameworks, and developmental agendas. Today's roundtable will offer a space for strategic dialogue among regional leaders, policymakers, researchers, and practitioners. Therefore, the college is pleased to host this event as we have dedicated decades to the education, advocacy, and empowerment of working people across the Caribbean, and we are proud to continue in this tradition today. Let me once again thank you for your presence, your partnership, and your commitment to building a just, inclusive, and sustainable Caribbean region through the power of solidarity. So I say let the conversations begin, and I say thank you again for being with us this morning. My role is dual. I deliver the welcome, but I'm also one of the moderators for this morning's session, along with Mr. Bartholomew. So we are going to proceed directly into the discussions this morning. And just wanted to set the tone with respect to the discussions that will be held this morning. The social and solidarity economy refers to forms of economic activities and relations that prioritize social and often environmental objectives over profit. The SSC is fundamental about reasserting social control over economy and relinking economy with society and nature. So our focus is not on profit. It's about improving society, doing things that better the individuals and the collective as a whole. All SSCs emphasize human, social values and ethics in economic activity and relations. Over the last decade, SSCs have rapidly grown in numbers in both developed and developing countries, right here in Trinidad and Tobago and across the Caribbean. We have seen a growth in this sector. Particularly, it's worthy to note that in Europe, there are about 2.8 million SSCs, and they account for 6.3% of employment in Europe. So the industry in Europe is a thriving one. That being said, Europe has put in place a very robust ecosystem to support the development of SSEs. And that ecosystem involves policy, it involves infrastructure and institutions that support the role and development of the social and solidarity economy. So that being said, lays the foundation for our discussions this morning, and I would want to hand over to Mr. Bartholomew to take us through the proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Salino. And of course, we are here to discuss the social and solidarity economy, but even more importantly, we would really want to get into the role of the social and solidarity economy in developing what we are now affectionately a part of, the people's sector. And we are doing this under three main pillars, which we have really established to work through this conference, the Caribbean World of Work Forum. And these pillars are resilience, transformation, and sustainability. So it's important that we frame it within that perspective and the discourse to be driven through these three main pillars. Resilience, as we would have it, refers to the ability of the enterprises in the social and solidarity economy to use their unique features as a strategy to address key socio-economic, cultural, and environmental issues. Now, the term SSE is nuanced for the most part. However, as cooperatives, and in particular credit unions, we are familiar with the parameters of this structure. But even more importantly, collective bodies have been representative of empowerment and transformation, particularly among people within various communities, whether those communities are geographic communities or communities of interest. So it's important that we frame it in that perspective. Transformation. We spoke about transformation, not only transforming the lives of individuals, but also in terms of transforming communities, making it different, and insofar at times being disruptive. So what are the parameters of this disruption, and what are we prepared to tolerate, accept, and pursue as collectives and organizations in the social and solidarity economy? And also in terms of sustainability. So sustainability addresses the ability of these types of enterprises to really collaborate with, yes, governmental institutions, but also agencies and local and regional education and training organizations, such as the Cipriani College. So as far as addressing sustainability issues and embedding the discussion in terms of how we take next steps and move it forward, those things are very important. We had a number of discussions this morning, and a lot of times we have addressed issues in a sort of fad approach, and really it's about creating more sustainability, moving the discussion forward. So as we dive into the discussion, just to give you an idea of the format, we will be taking some brief remarks from every panelist, 3 to 5 minutes, on their take on the people's sector and building resilience, transforming, and achieving sustainability. In the order, you would see up on stage, we would start with Dr. Musa Bayana. We would be followed by, we'll start with Minister Jordan. And then we'll be, Minister Jordan was prepared to give way, but I'll bring him back. Followed by Dr. Musa Bayana, and then we'll have Mr. Abdullah, and of course followed by Sunati Maraj. So, I'll change the order again. I'll get it right. All right? So, it's important that we be able to ask the question, what was shared, a QR code, will be on the screen. Please feel free to scan that QR code. That QR code will take you to a form where you will be able to post questions. That will be fed directly to us as moderators. So I invite you to not rush, take it one at a time, submit your questions, and we'll be happy to facilitate and channel those questions to the various panelists for their feedback. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Minister Jordan. He has a long bio here. I'll keep it brief. All right? And Mr. Jordan is moving me quickly along. So let's get into the discussion. Please welcome Minister Jordan.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. My distinguished fellow panelists, leadership at the Cipriani College, it is, and what I'm saying now is not part of my 3 to 5 minutes. It is an honor. Mr. Abdullah, I'm not sure why they think that politicians and trade unionists can stick to 3 to 5 minutes, but we have a lot to say. But I just want to thank the Cipriani College for the privilege or the opportunity to be able to share with you. I remember participating, I do not remember how many years ago it was, but one of the conferences a few years ago when we spoke about the social partnership, and that was, social dialogue was one of the areas being addressed. Now, with respect to the matter of the social and solidarity economy, I want to say a couple of things, and I don't think I'm going to get to the points of sustainability and those things. They'll probably come up in the questions. But with respect to some background information, and I'll share a bit about Barbados's perspective. For the first time in 2018, we had a situation where there was set up a portfolio responsibility specifically for the third sector. We had not had that before. That is not to say we did not have social enterprises and cooperatives and credit unions. But it came out of a recognition that the third sector, non-governmental sector, civil society actors, non-state actors, were important enough to national development that would cause us to want to place particular attention on that sector with the aim of making it resilient, sustainable, transforming it, all those components. And that caused us to focus in a very strong way on the third sector. And I'm happy that the officer in my ministry, Mrs. Rhonda Farley, who leads in that effort, building the capacity and sustainability of our third sector, is here with me and with us today. Now, I want to say something else by way of framing. I should inform you that the Caribbean has been very involved at the international level on the discussion on the social and solidarity economy. The definition, the internationally accepted definition, that is to say the definition of social and solidarity economy that was voted by the United Nations General Assembly, came out of a discussion at the International Labour Organization. And I think some of us will be familiar with the fact that the ILO has for many decades placed much emphasis on cooperatives. The discussion, I think, took place in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, 2022. Yeah. And I will inform you that on that committee, 2 of the 4 officers of that committee were from the Caribbean. That committee developed the first international definition for social and solidarity economy, which some of you may have or have access to. And the Caribbean had a hand in the crafting of that definition and as well as putting together policies, positions that could be taken by social partners, that is to say, employers and workers' organizations and governments, as well as steps that could be taken by the ILO. Now, our perspective on the social and solidarity economy is both philosophical, because we believe in it, but I will tell you, and politicians ought to be very straight and transparent, it is also a very practical thing for us. Social enterprises support organizations that are very focused or solely focused on the developing of people. Now, these organizations reach spaces and places that governments cannot reach, in spite of governmental resources. They get into the nooks and crannies. We talk about grassroots organizations. As much as a government tries, it will never be able to reach some of those places and spaces that social organizations, non-governmental organizations, CSOs, CBOs, community-based organizations, are able to reach. The other thing, and Mrs. Farley hears me say this quite often, there is no amount of money that you can pay to a public officer to generate in that person, as well-meaning as they are, the passion that is found in persons who are involved in leading civil society organizations. And that passion is really what drives the sector. That passion, in the absence of financial resources or other physical resources, that passion is what has created sustainability. The passion itself speaks to the sustainability of the sector. There are people who, in Barbados, in the Barbados context, who have a child, for example, who has a particular physical condition or disability, and the passion for wanting to do well by my child, to do well by the children of others who find themselves in the same situation, drives those individuals. So many of them are grassroots, and we have seen in our country a development that has now gone beyond cooperatives and the credit union movement, which has come out of the cooperative movement, come out of the trade union movement in particular, and a move into many other areas, sporting organizations, community health organizations, and quite a lot in Barbados in the health provision sphere. And those organizations, we believe, must be encouraged, must be facilitated, and the responsibility lies with government to create the environment, because that is really the only reason why government should exist, to create an environment that could allow for development, for orderly development. If, and trade unionists know this very well, if we were all equal in all aspects, there would be no need for a government. And so I'm not sure if Dr. Abdullah's sneeze was part of the emphasis. But it was for emphasis. If we were all equal, there would be no need for government. So government is facilitator, building structures that encourage rather than hinder, that promote rather than attempt to take glory when the glory is not, let me say, ours. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. So I'm speaking about myself as a representative of governments. Now, let me wrap up because I think 10 minutes is probably gone. For the development of the sector, social and solidarity economy sector, it will be important for the structures that are established to be facilitative, to be easy to navigate, These things are important because we talk about the social and solidarity economy as though it is a very well-established area. In my view, it is not. Now, we have the credit union movement, which is well-established, but we in Barbados see the social sector beyond the credit union movement. We have gone and we have included in our social partnership, our formal membership of the social partnership, the credit union movement. So our social partnership was set up as government, employers, and workers. In 2018, we formally included the credit union movement into the social partnership. But that does not say or suggest that the entire social and solidarity economy has been included. And so we are moving ahead to make sure that all of the social actors feel a part of the drive to develop the nation. Many of these small organizations are driven by one or two or three people. So when I say that we ought to set up structures that are facilitative, they have to bear in mind that many of the civil society organizations that exist, at least in our country, in Barbados, are very small. And so, for example, when we are developing capacity building workshops, we need to set them up at times when the working people who are driving some of these organizations are able to attend. We ought to start to use technology so that some of the capacity building courses can be accessed at night when people are at home and having looked after their children, those kinds of things, having done their other chores. We have to make sure that we are facilitating the development of the organizations, and for those organizations to be sustainable beyond the passion of those who lead them, then the financial component, and this is where the economy comes in, social and solidarity economy. There has to be a drive to make sure that these organizations are able to sustain themselves. It will not be good if organizations that do such good work feel always that they have to be beggars. Apply for this grant, look for money here. In Barbados, we would say scrounging around, trying to find a few dollars here and a few dollars there to fund their programs. And I commend the Cipriani College for focusing on the social and solidarity economy, because government is also not able to provide all the funding for all the organizations, but we must develop an ecosystem that allows these very critical organizations, critically important organizations, to be able to do the work that they've been set up to do, to be able to fulfill the dreams of those who've set them up, and to be able to actualize and make real the results of the passion of the leaders in those organizations. Thank you very much.
Testing, right. Two things stood out there for me. That establishment of the People Sector Ministry in 2018 and the ecosystem, the importance of financing SSEs and the different strategies that we take. So next, I would want to invite Dr. Johnny Mosambayana, Director of the International Labour Organization, Caribbean Office, to deliver his opening remarks.
Honorable Minister, and fellow panelists, let me say all protocol observed. Good morning.
Morning.
After the minister has addressed you, you still feel a bit sleepy. Good morning.
Good morning.
That's better. So, the ILO promotes decent work. So why would I, an ILO director, be here talking about the social and solidarity economy? Well, that is because the social and solidarity economy is a key vehicle for achieving decent work. And the ILO has been at the forefront, first focusing on the cooperative sector, coming up with recommendation 193, and then convening the first global meeting on the social and solidarity economy, which was actually convened in Africa in 2010. And from there, coming up with a resolution in 2022 on the social and solidarity economy. And with that resolution, working in the context of the UN, with the UN Special Task Team, that led to the development of the UN resolution on the social and solidarity economy. And the ILO itself then developed a strategic plan, a 7-year strategic plan, an action plan to support the implementation of the resolution. And perhaps then, let me say what are some of the key elements of the ILO strategic plan. And let me also say what is it then we are doing in the region. We are supporting the development of cooperative policies and legislation. We are working with Dominica, where we are hoping that the policy will be adopted before the end of this year. We are working with Bermuda, where the policy is also before cabinet. We are working with Guyana, where in partnership with Cipriani, we are hoping to, we did an assessment, and we are hoping then to come up with a policy and action plan for the social and solidarity economy in Guyana. We are also working in the context of the fishing sector in Guyana, supporting particularly cooperatives there. In Suriname, we are also working on the social and solidarity economy. In Belize, we have now started a project in the south of Belize, one of whose key outcomes is support on the social and solidarity economy. So this to say, we are building on this region's long history. We are building on this region's long history of cooperativism and expanding it to the social and solidarity economy. I think there's a problem with the... Are we okay? Yeah. So we are very active across the region in working on the social and solidarity economy. But I want to end with a plea. When you do a quick literature search, you probably will see some of these activities that we're doing. But when you try to see the nature, scale, and scope of the social and solidarity economy in the Caribbean region, you will actually see data from Europe saying that 18.6 million people are working in the social and solidarity economy across the European Union. And I think saying that it's contributing to about 4% GDP in the European Union. You'll see reference to Colombia, I think 3.2% contribution to GDP. You will not see valid statistics on the Caribbean region. And I want to end with a pledge, with a plea for Cipriani and all the actors in the room. Let us do something on the data. I would not want us to have another event in the future on the social and solidarity economy where we discuss many things, but we can't put data on the table. What is the size and scale of the social and solidarity economy? What is its contribution to GDP? How many people are working in that sector? And how many are we moving from, let's say, work to decent work? This, I think, would be something that would really help us in our push towards strengthening the social and solidarity economy in the region. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Musabayana, for those remarks. I'm certain the comments so far have generated some questions and some remarks to come. Next up to bring remarks, I'd like to invite Ms. Sunati Maharaj is the director of the Lloyd Best Institute of the Caribbean, but she's also the managing director of Caribbean Newsroom, a recently launched digital media enterprise. So you can look out for Caribbean Newsroom on the airwaves, but you could look out for Ms. Suniti Maharaj at the podium right now. I invite her to the podium.
Good morning and thank you. I have at most 5 minutes to make. So I'll just put a few points. The first point I want to make is about the social and solidarity economy, which for me is a case of old wine in new bottles. Because is it not solidarity and is it not social care that kept Caribbean society and marginalized people together long before they were admitted into the corridors of power? It was a GAIAP system, it was a SUSU, it was a panchayat, it was a council of elders, it was community care and love and responsibility. These people were not in power. They didn't have the right to vote until 1946. Yet, for centuries, they survived the worst tortures possible to bring their children and their descendants into the modern era. That is the framework on which sustainability of a civilization, Caribbean civilization, is built. And if we do not plumb our own history and understand our culture and value it and build our cultural confidence on that foundation, we will be falling prey to a lot of concepts that we're still trying to grapple with. Just a simple thing like gender-based violence. I have been in conferences where people are looking askance, but if you tell them about Hibichi, they understand that. They know that to a T. And so we have to find language that fits our reality. What we have our challenge is that the migration of people into a democratic state embraced a construct that collided with the solidarity and unity institutions of the people and the divisive political construct of the colonizer. This is the source of our dysfunction today, why we cannot, no matter how much education we get, we cannot solve the problems. And I do not agree, I'm sorry to say, with some thoughts of the minister, because I think it is possible to find passion among public servants if we knew how to align the tasks that people in their youth come to the job, I want change, I want to make a difference, and then find a dysfunctional public service because it does not know how to change itself. So I will just put a few thoughts here and hope that we can take up the conversation a little later. There's one thought I want to leave with you, though, that the challenge of change for the Caribbean is what I call mainstreaming the maroon. We are all maroons in our society. The work of change is going on outside institutions. We want that to come into the heart of the process so that we can actually achieve change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maharaj. Particularly of importance, the historical perspective, the culture that informs our thinking today, and the establishment of the social and solidarity economy. Our final introductory comments will now be delivered by Mr. David Abdullah. I welcome him to the podium.
Thank you very much. A very good morning, and all protocols observed. Let me just say that, that my participation here, like Suniti, was very last minute, but I could not turn down Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, having been a chair of the board 2 decades or so ago. So thanks. I want to say that this is not the first discussion in Trinidad and Tobago about the solidarity economy or the social solidarity economy. The first, actually, and I want to commend Vicky Acevero, who organized the discussion, interestingly, at the Chamber of Commerce building in 2018. And that was initiated as well, and I want to recognize Professor Carrie Levitt, who introduced me to this whole notion of the social economy. Carrie is still alive. She's 102 now, I think it is. And she was here in Trinidad, and we were sitting down in Chamfleur where she was staying with a friend, and she told me about this social economy. 2018, so this precedes ILO and UN and so on. And in 2018, Vicky organized a session, and MSJ had one, if I could blow my own hat, at Big Woo, where we had a half-day session with Nancy Niamtan from Montreal, who was one of the leading proponents of it, coming out of the experience in Montreal of the loss of many jobs with neoliberalism and restructuring of capital and so on, and then people moving into the social solidarity economy, and she shared those experiences. So I just want to identify that it's very important, and MSJ's policy is actually for the social solidarity economy. We put it out in our Roadmap for Recovery 2020, 5 years ago, March or May 2020, as a counter to the neoliberal capitalist dominant narrative. And that we have to say that because the neoliberal capitalist narrative is one which concentrates wealth and power and income in the hands of fewer and fewer multi-millionaires and multi-billionaires, and destroys jobs, creates precarious work, does not enable the facilitation of decent work, and it also destroys the environment through extraction, and therefore makes our sustainability that much more difficult. So we must recognize it in terms of the driving policy sets that take place. And so the social solidarity economy is important as a counter to the dominant economic narrative. I want to say, coming to Trinidad and Tobago specifically, that if there's a discussion about CPEP, it's not simply about corruption and nepotism, blah, 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 because all the parties do that and have done that. What we have to think about is transforming CPEP and URP from contractors who employ workers for the workers to own the cooperatives, and then the cooperatives become real community cooperatives, which is social solidarity economy. And you cut out who is party A, who is Indian, who is African, and all that kind of thing that comes with the divisive politics of our societies. I want to suggest that we should be having many daycare centers. All large corporations, government offices, ministries should have daycare centers, which then are operated primarily by women, yes, but cooperatives again, as part of the social solidarity economy, so that our women and men don't have to run away from work to pick up the child to bring them, or women who are working as security guards and so on, worrying about where their children are, and so on and so on. And we could elaborate on those kinds of ideas. Medical marijuana has been touted. We argue that the traditional users, the Rastafari, who have been discriminated against in this country over many years, that they should be the ones who form cooperatives to develop marijuana farms and medicinal marijuana and so much more, the oils and all of that. So let us use these opportunities that are faced by what we have in front of us to create the social solidarity economy in very real ways. And school feeding is the last one. Every child going to school should have breakfast and lunch in school, and we need to therefore have many more cooperatives formed to provide catering for the expanded school feeding, which then ties in that all meals should be based upon local agricultural produce, so we eat healthier, but we also begin to change the culture of fast foods for our children, and we buy local and we improve the health of our citizens. All of these are concrete things that could be done. And the credit union movement, which has the financial resources, now needs to tie in to all of those other cooperative examples that I've given. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah. Really sharing with us there some very practical examples of how cooperatives, SSEs can be implemented. And just to build on his last point with respect to school feeding, there is indeed a very successful cooperative in Tobago that handles school feeding throughout the island. We were there last week and they actually, I think it's over 5,000 meals per day that they have to produce on a daily basis. So there is a successful model that we can look at in Tobago. So we want to get into the question section of the discussion. I know Colin is monitoring and I'm also monitoring the questions that are coming in. And I would want to lead off with one question that is broad in scope. How can the SSE, and this is to all the panelists, how can the SSE be more or better integrated into national development strategies across the Caribbean? I want to ask Minister Jordan to jump in here, and you can.
Ask the question again.
How can SSEs be better integrated into national development strategies across the Caribbean region?
All right, thank you very much for the question. The better integrating, if you can break that a little bit, yeah. The better integrating presupposes a recognition of the importance of the social and solidarity economy. As a policymaker, I cannot make that assumption. So I will begin, we may say begin at first principles. Begin by recognizing the importance of the social and solidarity economy. Once that is the case, and recognition, it can't be a paper recognition or just something that somebody has said. It is a recognition that must be demonstrated so that, for example, the move to helping to build capacity, helping to find financial sources of finance, those kinds of things will say to the social and solidarity economy actors that there is a seriousness to the policymakers' stance on including SSE in national development. Thereafter, SSE actors, those who are involved in the leadership in the social and solidarity economy, have to be at the table. And that is why in 2018, when we came to office in Barbados, we came to office at a difficult time economically. But we realized that we couldn't fix what needed to be fixed with only the traditional actors at the table. Particularly the financial cooperative sector, the credit union movement, is significant. It is one that we as a government, some iterations before, had helped to facilitate in terms of its growth. And so if we were going to be addressing financial issues, then the credit union movement needed to be in the room. They needed to be at the table. And that is the reason why they were included in the social partnership. Since then, we followed, I think it was the Trinidad model. Trinidad had, for some time, a social justice committee. And what we then set up, I think maybe around 2019, was a social justice committee where there was even greater involvement from the civil society, and you would recognize, I'm using civil society and SSC to some degree interchangeably, but that is from the Barbados perspective. And the Social Justice Committee includes many of the non-state actors who are not necessarily in the SSE, but who need SSE for sustainability and transformation. And so having those organizations at the table when we're discussing legislation and impacts on people, impact on community, having the SSE at the table involve allowing a voice, well, not allowing a voice because they have voice, but facilitating the voice to be expressed in those places where the policy is being discussed and developed will allow for integrating social and solidarity economy into national development.
Thank you very much, Minister Jordan. My question, I don't know if anyone else has any feedback on that before I jump in. All right. Okay, so great. So in terms of... Okay, you have feedback?
Yes.
All right. Okay, I give way to Sunit.
Yeah, I know we have to be very tight, but I think the answer to that question that was asked is an empowered people. And in that, disempowered people are people who go along, they're silent when wrong is going on, but it is because they are fearful. They're fearful because when they were, as the people I was talking about centuries ago, when they were poor and had nothing, they had more power. They could stand up and defy. They have a lot more to defend now, and they're dependent on government. And government, the footprint of government with all your oil and gas in Trinidad, taxes and royalties, and disbursement centralized in the hand of government is the source of the problem. But the cooperative movement is the sleeping tiger. And I wait for it to rise up with its power to organize people. And all those things that David was talking about are the ways in which you have the capacity to organize, and the credit unions have mobilization of funds. And when you weigh each application and request, one of the things you must weigh is the developmental value of what is before you. And you have to build that civil society. I know we talk a lot about civil society now, but think of the number of NGOs whose, as soon as their funds disappear, which we are seeing with in US, everybody's cutting grants, they disappear. They live on funds that they don't themselves generate. But people have always generated that capacity if they recognize they need this money for that. So this is just a call to the cooperative movement to recognize your power and to unleash it to organize people.
I want to add on this. The question says, how can it be better integrated into national development?
Yes.
And I think first is clarity of concept, definition. I'm not sure, is it where we are? If I can go to a place where I'll find a comprehensive definition of the social and solidarity economy in any of the countries in which we are. Number one. And number two, I come back to the point I made. They say if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So if we are fuzzy about definition, we are unclear about size and scale and contribution, how then do we integrate it into national development more effectively? If that's what we are trying to do, then I think we need much greater clarity on concept, much greater clarity on the scale of typology, how it exists in different shapes and forms in societies. And with that, we can then be more clear how we anchor it clearly in the institutional framework of government. I'm very happy to see that my partners from Ministry of Labor are here, and the new title says Small Micro-Enterprise Development. So where is the social and solidarity economy actually anchored in government? And maybe I can be corrected. Which is that one place, I hope they're here in the room, and we will hear from them. But for me, the policy, then development of a clear policy. If we are clear on concept, if we are clear on size and scale, then we are clear on the policy that is required to create the enabling environment for its promotion. I think if we do that, then we are well on the way to mainstreaming it more into national development. Thank you.
All right. So, Ms. Abdullah, you good? All right, good. All right. No, and it's important. We have a number of the actors and the stakeholders. So Dr. Musa Bayana, it was very instructive, you know, asking about, because I was going to pose a question, based on your global experience, what will it require for the players, the persons seated in this room, to really move into more intentional and robust data gathering that could help drive the social and solidarity economy? And, you know, the factors that may have contributed to the lack of the availability of the data as it comes to that. Yeah.
I'm happy to go into this more.
Right.
I'm hoping that somewhere in the room, the statistics agency is also here. I'm not sure what parameters they're using to collect data on the social and solidarity economy. I am not sure. I'm also trying to check, even as I'm speaking, just to see what do we have, and to see, do we have a publication that says social and solidarity economy in Trinidad and Tobago? And so I think we need to engage with the formal agencies that have the responsibility for the generation of data. There is a global debate, which ILO is leading in the context of the International Council of Labor Statisticians, on definitions and concepts so that there is uniformity globally. And there is a major area of work around statistics in the social and solidarity economy. And I think that could be an area that we need to follow. So I would be very interested for a dialogue with the statistics agency on how they see developing a module on the social and solidarity economy as an appendage to the labor force surveys. Yeah.
Well, I would say to that data is generally captured by the Central Statistical Office, which is in serious need. The whole statistical, national statistics, so it's in dire need of upgrade and reformation. And the draft legislation, the bill, the National Statistical Institute, has been languishing for reasons that we could understand, because it is going to be an independent entity for the capture of data, not data that is under the control of some minister. And therefore, that is something that should be high on our priority, to push government to bring that law, that bill before the Parliament with the same speed that it is going after other things. Having said that, we do have some models for capturing invisible resources. We've done it with women's work at home in the house. And what you're probably looking at is, where are the places where you could capture in terms of community resources that are invisible to the policymakers, but that they're expended, they're voluntary, and you have to bring fresh eyes to recognizing it as something of value that can be captured and translated in data. Because a lot of the things of value in this society, because that is the colonization process, is that you do not see it. Your eyes are not trained to recognize that the person who walks your child to school is actually providing an economic function. And I want to say one thing about Carnival, because that's a good example of uncaptured data. We know so much. All the emphasis is how much foreign exchange comes in with Carnival. We haven't been talking about how much foreign exchange goes out, and tourism and so on. But what distinguishes Trinidad's Carnival is the traditional mass. It is not the Vegas mass. When you see documentary makers and filmmakers and so on come to Trinidad, that is what brings them. And that is the most marginalized group of people who are paid like $500 to appear all over the place and so on. And we got away by the skin of our teeth when there was a plan to create Streets of Carnival near Movitown. Because all those traditional mass people have created value in that over since the beginning of Carnival. They were going to become like Disney World workers, wake up in the morning, put on a costume, and go and play, probably for minimum wage. So that is where a cooperative of the traditional mass community, to make them become owners and to get into a business and build it from the bottom, because they are the investors. They are the investors. Later, absolutely.
The social partnership has not specifically addressed SSC in Barbados. So let me put that on the table. The social partnership has dealt with a number of issues and challenges really along what the social partnership has traditionally addressed, so that much of the work with respect to social and solidarity economy, first, moving away from the NGOs and CSOs, which we were addressing since 2018 in a very focused way. It was from 2022 that we started to talk about the actual economy side of it, outside of the addressing of what I said earlier in 2018 of our economic situation. Now, the economic situation, that was a specific focus on the credit union movement and the involvement of the credit union movement. I don't like to restrict, at least in the Barbados context, we don't restrict the SSC discussion to cooperatives / credit unions. But if we're talking about cooperatives and credit unions, the first step was to make sure that the credit union and cooperative sector was in the room at the table. So if the questioner asked for a specific, that was the specific. Now, beyond that, in terms of developing the sector, that has not, to this point, been on the agenda of the social partnership, but it's been very much on the agenda of government, and I think I've already said some of the things that we've been doing, the building of capacity. We have certain regulations with respect to particularly not-for-profit companies and charities in terms of documentation. They're to submit every year, and Rhonda's been leading in engaging with our Institute of Chartered Accountants of Barbados, for example, to provide either free or discounted financial statement preparation services. So we've also done report writing. We've done work with ILO with respect to the business from a SSE and micro business perspective. So there's been some training in that area. There has been a trainee trainer. So now we've started now to have some of the persons who were trained in that ILO program start to train others on the ground in terms of creating the enterprises that will be SSE. So those are some of the things that we've done. I don't want to mention proposal writing because that proposal writing really is necessary now because those organizations have to apply for grants and apply for funding. But it kind of reinforces dependency. And while we are so I've said it even though I said I didn't want to say it. Even though we give training in project proposal writing for application for grant funding, we are also focusing on helping those organizations build enterprises that will be able to fund the good work that they do.
All right, thank you. We want to get into some disruptors because we have a couple questions coming from the audience in terms of the whole advent of transformative technologies, in particular artificial intelligence. And the question here is, how can we enhance and continue to enhance the human experience through the actors in the social and solidarity economy in the advent of these disruptors where there is less human interaction and there appears to be a removal of the human experience. So how can that really be integrated into the social and solidarity economy to enhance and I dare say multiply the effect and the impact of the resilience, the transformation, and the sustainability that we want to get from the social and solidarity economy. Yeah?
It's with Turin. It's done by the Turin Center.
Could I,
Yes.
as Mr. Abdullah was speaking, I agree with what he said. It reminded me of two things that I would want to relate. I remember in 2019,
There are plenty of questions.
our Prime Minister was speaking to
Maybe we should ask them.
the ILO. This was their centenary.
We could integrate all.
And one of the things she spoke about was ownership of technologies. Now, at that point, we weren't talking about AI, but we were talking about technology, how technology was going to transform, was in the process of transforming the world, particularly the world of work. She threw out the, I would say, the challenge about why can't our people, Caribbean people, be the owners of this technology rather than just being the victims of the technology. Now, as Ms. Abdullah was speaking, I remember that, and then I tied it to the matter of AI, and I'm remembering and recalling the story of OpenAI. That organization could have been, and they're still struggling with the structure, could have been a social enterprise. It was set up, apparently, designed to be a social enterprise. And now there's the challenge of the making of money. So breaking it into two and deciding the reason why I raised it is because, in my view, besides using technology to facilitate the provision of services, the development and ownership of technology could also be social enterprise. If it is AI, whatever it is, apps, people do apps, so that the enterprise does not have to be what we consider a traditional enterprise. It could be a tech-focused enterprise, but one that is developed to aid in the promotion of people, one that where the gains are for the development of social interventions as opposed to the development, the creation of profit for a few individuals. I just thought I would mention that based on my thinking.
Yeah. I want to say that AI has to be seriously considered in this country because there's an instinct to embrace. And since Columbus came and gave the indigenous people some Class Bs and took their gold, we have been doing that, right? What is going to happen is a set of salesmen are going to descend on us and say we have the AI answer to all your problems. The very concept of the school, of what a school is going to become an issue. Mm-hmm. We have already seen it where children are they're in school and on their phone, all the social problems, the mental illness, all of these things are part of an alienated society. Somebody's going to stay abroad and they'll use AI and they will come up with an entire package, learning package about your own history, about our own history, about our environment, about our music. You see the AI is doing that if you just type in Calypso. It will just cover the internet in 2 seconds and just vomit it out to you. And if you're not careful, it will be full and riddled with errors, and that becomes your learning, right? We have to have an emergency response to AI right now because it is moving so fast that we miss the boat every time when it comes to planning. It is going to move so fast, and before government even gets hold of it, people have already embraced it and they're using it. Restaurants are changing. People going there, nobody's serving you. You could just put your order on, send it digitally. What about school feeding? You don't think that could happen? And the children, it's what our response is has to be calculated, and it has to bear the human factor. When are we going to say no to AI and yes to AI? Those are the issues we need to be talking about in an emergency mode right now. Well, that's a constitutional question. That's a constitutional question. That is the nature of the power system. A power system that is designed for central government. You know, we've removed the governor and we now have prime minister. It is how do you redesign your constitution to put power in the hands of the people? And that is not an easy question when people have to buy into a power system, because there's rewards for those who comply and there's nothing for those who don't, and you get marginalized. We go back to genuine local government reform. Those things we're talking about, how communities are organized. But governments do not surrender power, no matter how much constitutional reform commissions they set up. You are the one with the power, you do not set up a commission to redistribute your power. You always ask for that when you're in opposition, and you have no power. So the answer cannot come from governments and politicians. It comes from people establishing their own constitutional reform exercise. But that will require us to jump over the gaps of the culture of division. It is the most radical idea for Caribbean people is unity. It is anytime you get together, you shake the world. But our culture is constant division, division, division. Right? So that is why the most inclusive thing called Carnival is full of exclusivity. The all-inclusive is to keep people out. So we need to challenge ourselves with some of these assumptions, you know?
Yeah. I can just share my experience, and maybe the best way for me to do that is to just ask the participants to just go to Google and check something called ILO Social and Solidarity Economy Academy. I was privileged to be part of the first that dropped the concept in 2010 in South Africa. And to date, there have been 12 such academies throughout the world. I was interesting Minister Jordan to look at the list of countries which have held these academies. And the closest it got to us is Brazil in 2014, and Costa Rica in 2016. So it kind of jumped us. I was the key organizer of the fifth one in South Africa in 2015. And what that helped and how it can help us to address, and I think it captures a bit what my fellow panelist is saying. It's one place where you develop a 5-year, 10-year vision of where you want to go. And there's a complete buy-in by all the actors. And then you agree, these are all the elements over the next 10 years that we want to see. And then you hold various governments as they come in and out of power to account. And you agree that every 2 years, every 5 years, and 10 years, we're going to review how far we have come with this. Otherwise, then you have a plan of action that everybody buys into. And then you call those who are in power to say, what efforts are you going to help us to realize our goal? That way there's, let's say, a people-driven demand for action in particular areas to promote the social and solidarity economy. So I just wanted to share that the issues we're talking about globally, there are methods, there are tools that are being used, and other countries are using them to move forward. So the 2015 South Africa Social and Solidarity Economy, this year in 2025, 10 years later, they are holding another one in which they are now asking, how far have we come, what have we achieved, what things have we not achieved? At least they have a point to measure, and then from here they can make another plan of where it is they want to go to. I thank you.
On the matter of the disconnect, I wasn't sure that I should even intervene on that because it is a perennial concern. And I'm conscious of the fact that I am a government minister and obviously representing government. But I was not born a government minister. And before the last 7 years, when I got involved in active politics, part of that time, I was a leader in the hotel and tourism sector. I used to be president of the Barbados Sector and Tourism Association for a few years. And I have a first-hand understanding of what sometimes is perceived as a disconnect. But I think many of us back home tend to approach these matters both from a philosophical, but also from a practical, and I use the term but, not to say that they're disconnected. But I still use the word but. A philosophical and also a practical perspective. Now, we can be upset about the real and the perceived disconnect. But what we've determined to do in Barbados is that if there is a disconnect, there has to be agitation. Now, I've had a lot of conversations with Joni about our social partnership. The last conversation we had was when we signed our Decent Work Country program a couple of weeks ago. And both myself and one of the leaders of the trade union movement indicated that there was a time when there was a serious disconnect. And probably for the first time in Barbados' history, the employers, the business sector, and the trade union movement came together and marched, created significant presence in terms of galvanizing the public. I'm not saying that this is the reason for the full reason for the outcome, but I will say to you that the general election that followed, the government at the time won 0 seats in the House of Assembly. No, it was not only because of that agitation and making sure that the voice of the stakeholders was heard, but we are absolutely certain that that was a significant part of it. So that while it is true that there is sometimes a disconnect, the stakeholders, non-state actors, whether it is business, private sector, civil society, trade union movement, cooperative movement, have to exercise voice, have to speak up. And when it was in the private sector, we didn't plan to wait around for any significant constitutional changes or whatever. We keep noise when we need to keep noise. That's what we say in Barbados. We just keep noise. And you speak up. And that is the reason why I say then if I put on my government hat, it is important that in the fora where policy is being discussed, that those non-state actors are at the table. Now, being at the table is one thing, being listened to is another. If you're not listened to, you keep noise. Joni is also aware of a particular organization that constantly keeps noise. So government is consistently kept on its toes. And that is what, to me, that's how a society should function. You keep those who have responsibility for leadership on their toes. If you're a member of the ILO, we're on the governing body, you keep the leadership on its toes. If you are John's citizen or an organization, you keep those who have been elected, because I assume that in our form of governance, those who emerge as leaders have been elected by somebody. And if they've been elected, there's a certain mandate, but they still, or we still, I should say, have to be kept honest. And the responsibility, don't ask me to keep myself honest. No, I do. But you need to keep me honest. You need to keep me honest. You need to keep your leaders honest. And if I'm not part of leadership, I need to keep my leaders honest as well, at least to do my best to do that. So I just say that, yes, there's sometimes a disconnect. Some of you may think there is often a disconnect. There is a responsibility to make your voice heard. I agree that we have to be careful not to, and I think Suniti spoke to this, we have to be careful not to lose our voice. I believe everybody has a voice, and you know, sometimes we talk about giving voice to the voiceless. There are no voiceless. Sometimes we help to amplify voices. Everybody has a voice. We have to build the confidence of people, and that is really not something that governments can do very effectively, because there's always a suspicion hanging over a government. Whatever a government does, somebody sees it through, what are you up to? What is in the shadow behind the thing? And that is why those of you who are here, who are not part of government, you have a significant responsibility, both to help, to use your voice, and to amplify the voices of those who you should be hearing, but you may not be hearing. And I just say that we need to be practical in terms of developing our societies.
Thanks so much for that, Minister. And as we move to wrap-up time and the discussion on the disconnect, and I want to read this question exactly as I received it. As I look around the room, I see persons from a particular age predominantly. Most here understand the credit union or cooperative concept because they have lived through it. What are we doing to incorporate the Gen Zs into the concept? Bearing in mind, sustainability is geared toward leaving this world of work and everything else to the next generations. All right? So, what are we doing to incorporate the Gen Zs into the concept of the SSE? Given that sustainability is geared towards leaving this world of work and everything else to the next generations. Full disclaimer, I'm just reading it as I've received it, and it's anonymous. David, you want to jump in? Yeah.
Yeah.
recognize the path on which we are going with young people. The education system, starting from early childhood, if you were to map the education system, essentially, our youth are being warehoused. They're going from one school building to another school building, and when they come out, if they manage to get to university, then we are telling them, go solve problems. They have never got their hands dirty, right? I want to remind people that it was teenagers who invented pan, who tackled a piece of metal and figured out by exercising their critical faculties how to get one sound out of what shape of metal. It was teenagers, and they were not in school. And they were being beaten by the police. And they were doing all these things because they were turned on by the passion of learning, right? So the Lloyd Best Institute is focused on this is Lloyd's work, schools in Pan, not Pan in school, schools in Pan, trying to understand how it is that young people go into a pan yard and they learn to become the best performers on any stage in the world. They can go on the royal whatever stage and this one and that one. Yet, not only are they learning and performing at the very best in the world, they accept the discipline of the pan yard. They recognize that the older players who are there and have moved out of playing, they accept their authority. It is one of the safest places to send your daughters, because somebody will say, like Scrunter say, that ain't working here tonight. And we try to understand what is it in the pan yard, our own institution, that has been resilient, sustained itself since before the 1940s, sustained itself, put up with all the terrors of being brutalized and survived. What is it there that is turning on the brain of the young person? And yet that same young person goes into a classroom, shuts down their natural intelligence, can't keep up, and decides, I can't keep up, I'm wasting time here, I'm dropping out. And you drop out, you have nothing, and therefore you fall prey to the gangs because there's somebody there who will give you a few dollars to go run a little errand, then a little criminal errand. So the education system is actually destroying our youth, and it is with the full support of the state and families. Because Edison, all these people who invented things, they were out there. They were watching the world and the natural environment and figuring things out. And we are saying, well, I can't put my child in a taxi. All of us grew up, I took 3 taxis to get to work. And I could manage, and I could recognize, and I could see trouble, and I could know when to jump out of a taxi. But our children now, because of the situation of crime in the country, they're not being allowed to develop their own intuitive reflexes. And when they face the world, they have mental crises. So it's a very complex problem, but it is the path of development that we are following that is wrong.
I'd like to add, maybe from a policy perspective, young people have to be able to see, because I have 2 young adult daughters, and young people, the Gen Zs, identify fakes very, very quickly. They're very discerning where that's concerned. Sometimes I think they make an art or a science out of identifying people who are fake and who are saying stuff that they don't really mean. So that, from a policy perspective, our Gen Zs have to be able to see that V7, something like that, on many of the boards of our state-owned enterprises, we have young persons. I know on one, there's one who is 26, but that may have come out of the fact that our Prime Minister became a senior cabinet minister at 28. Wow. Right? So she was Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and a whole set of other things at 28 years old. Wow. Now, So there's an implicit recognition that young people can bring a lot to the table. Other young people need to be able to see that. A number of our NGOs are run by young people, addressing some of the issues that young people face, mental health, and some other mainly health-related, some educational-related issues. They also have to be embraced, because if they are on the front line of addressing these issues and they're not being recognized, then their spirit could be daunted. On the mat, somebody mentioned, though, about the credit union movement. This is a challenge that we have, and we have to work to address it. Now, I'm not sure how many young people, I don't have the numbers in terms of how many young people are part of the credit union movement. But what we are finding is that not a lot of our people, including not a lot of our young people, are financially literate. So in terms of thinking about saving, thinking about the future, there has to be a concerted effort, and this may come in education reform or other types of interventions, a concerted effort to educate our people generally, but particularly our young people, about finances. And part of that needs to include trying to build in them an understanding of the importance, not just historically, but currently, of the credit union movement, so that they can become involved and then get involved in the leadership. Because young people really want to lead. The last thing I will say, and I know that Suniti has been speaking a lot about education. So I'm saying this to the general public. We've attempted, we are still in the process of moving toward educational reform in Barbados. And I need to be careful how I say this. There are things that were more easily said when they were not being recorded and transmitted in sound bites. The challenge in education reform may not necessarily be government. It may be vested interests in society, and not in the places where you are thinking, not in established businesses but people who went to certain schools, who want the hierarchy to be retained. And there are a lot of challenges to education reform that if the reform is to happen, if proper reform is to happen, there's going to be the need for mass voice supporting the education reform, at least supporting the efforts. And I'm not saying that whatever a government proposes is exactly what you want, but just the idea, the concept of reform will need the intervention of people at all levels of society. And I think it will need the intervention of people at, this is a term we don't like to use, the ordinary citizen needs to get involved in the push to education reform, because I agree fully with Sutini. If we don't change things in the space, the only space that is now left to influence people, because many people don't go to places of faith anymore, so there's not that space. Families are fractured. Youth groups and community groups are not as strong as before. Trade unions themselves are not as strong as before. The only place where people are mandated to be for some period of time in their lives, so where you can transmit values, the only place left is the school system. And if it is dysfunctional with respect to modern development, then we're going to have dysfunctional societies going forward. So I agree that, and this is my closing comment, and I'll give you the closing comment, that we have to pay attention, if all that we're talking about is to work, to our educational system, to make sure that it is relevant to the needs of our societies, that it does not stratify as the colonial system attempted to do and did very effectively, that it encourages the training of the mental capacity so that people can be innovators, developers, and ultimately the leaders and builders of our societies and our economies.
Great, thank you. Good. All right, so those just draw the discussion this morning to a conclusion. And I mean, very thought-provoking, and dare I say inspiring comments. Just to piggyback off Suniti's point, the Cipriani College, we consider ourselves to be an institution of social justice, and not just an education warehouse. We consider ourselves to be a transformative hub, not simply transactional. And we can applaud that. Shameless plug. And we really look forward, because the reality of this situation is we need more young people to be involved and really to bring about that transformation. Those of you with youth arms, we encourage you to get those young people into our conference for the upcoming days. Let them be a part of this discussion. This is about the future of work and the social and solidarity economy. So I hand over to Mr. Salino to just close in. Yeah, we just do the closing remarks and the vote of thanks.
All right, good morning again, everyone. The discussion this morning, I must say, as a moderator, it's very easy when you have a panel like this. You don't have to do much as a moderator. So I want to thank the panelists for their engagement and their contributions this morning. Some key things that stood out for me is data, youth engagement policy, with youth, policy, and engagement. I am sure everyone here could identify some other areas that stood out for them, but these things stood out for me as areas, as a sector that we need to address in the near future as a social and solidarity sector. So the conversation, this is not the end of the conversation. When I looked at the questions that came in, we had over 30 questions. And a number of those questions could be bundled into different categories: artificial intelligence, transformation, policy, youth, the credit union movement, the non-financial cooperative sector. So all of these issues are going to be addressed at our CWWF conference starting tomorrow. We have a number of sessions that would be taking place that address all of these issues, from wages, industrial relations, AI, the social and solidarity economy. So I want to extend an invitation to all of those persons here, whether you have registered or not, please join us at the conference. Take the opportunity before you leave today to get the information to register for the conference. Join us. You are welcome. Your attendance here today signals to us that you are interested in moving this sector forward, and we need the partners to be part of that discussion, which I must say the college would be happy to lead for the Caribbean region. I'm sure if the director was here, that's something that he would say, that the college is willing to take the lead in moving that discussion forward, conducting the research on the social and solidarity economy. So a year or two from now, when the ILO director speaks with us again, he is not speaking about the lack of data on the social and solidarity economy. That is something that the college would commit to working with the sector to undertake. So as I said, join us at the Caribbean World of Work Forum. The opening session is this evening from 6 p.m. and the working sessions start tomorrow promptly at 9 a.m. So register, speak to our staff here, and make use of that opportunity. I would ask Colin to actually do the vote of thanks, and we have some time. Let's chat, let's mingle a bit, and continue to work on developing and building the social and solidarity economy for the Caribbean region.
Thank you, Sheldon. And vote of thanks will be brief. First of all, let me begin with the panelists. Thank you so much, the Honorable Colin E. Jordan, MP, Minister of Labor, Social Security, and the Third Sector in Barbados. I think he deserves a round of applause. Of course. Please join me also in thanking Dr. Johnny Musabayana, who, the director of the ILO, Decent Work Team and Office for the Caribbean. He is going straight from this panel onto a jumbo jet for a well-deserved vacation. Also, Mr. David Abdullah. Please give him a round of applause. And of course, Suniti Maharaj. I extend an even greater, thanks to these two individuals because they actually responded. I can't even say in short order, almost immediately to the invitation from Cipriani College, and they did not add tremendous value to our discussion. Thank you so much. Of course, our contributors, I must begin with the Ministry of Labor and Small and Micro Enterprise Development, the Honorable Minister Leroy Batiste in his absence, but ably represented here by PS, Natalie Willis, and the team. I think, yes, I see the PS here as well, yes. And the team, thank you so much for all your support. All the team from Cipriani College who have made their input to making this event very successful. I woke up at 1 a.m. and I saw the team working online. And of course, to you, our fellow stakeholders, thank you for occupying these tables, consuming, not the breakfast, the knowledge, all right? And, filling and being empowered to move forward. We really look forward to having you as part of our conference in the upcoming days. Please register at the desk. There's a cost associated to this conference, but please be quiet. Register at the desk, and you will receive a surprise at no cost. All right, so that is our thank you to you for being a part of this morning's forum. Thank you so much for making this event such an overwhelming success. I look forward to having you join us the rest of the week, this evening at 6 p.m. at the CLR James Auditorium for the opening ceremony, and beginning at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning for 3 days of robust conversation on every single topic discussed here this morning and so much more. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow cooperators and comrades, thank you very much. Have a great week.
Yeah, but I'm